Welcome. Today we'll be discussing streamlining endpoint management, a look at the new Microsoft Intune Suite. No matter where you are on your endpoint journey, I'm sure today's session will be insightful, so get your questions ready. For more information about today's program, make sure you check out our blog on this topic and other useful links located at the end of the presentation. So with me today is Shane Curtis, my colleague, friend, and principal cloud architect here for Endpoint Technologies. Shane has been working with endpoint management security for over 25 years and has been a consultant for Microsoft Technologies for 15 years. Some specific technologies that he specializes in are Microsoft Intune, Configuration Manager, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Azure Virtual Desktop, and then specifically Intune for well over 5 years. Welcome, Shane. We're so glad you're joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
So let's quickly go down the agenda. First, we're going to have an Intune overview, bring everybody up to speed, where we've been, and then we're going to see, what are we seeing with our customers? What are they deploying? And Shane's going to give us some of his insight there about what he's seeing with customers. Intune Suite overview is obviously probably why a lot of you folks are here. We're going to break down what this all means, what's included, what's not included, what's going to cost. We'll then go into licensing, which is everybody's favorite topic. And of course, we've got a couple questions that came in advance, so we'll definitely get to those. But if you have questions, put them in the chat, raise your hand at the end. We definitely have some time reserved for that. And then obviously, we've got some very helpful links at the end as well. So let's get started. We got like 3 quick anonymous links. So Casey's going to go ahead and launch those. So quick 3 polls here, and we'll review the results during the question period at the very end of the program. So when you can, please submit your answers. These are all anonymous. So let's get started. Now, we just want to know where you're coming from. Are you from state government, federal, education, commercial, tribal, nonprofit? Just let us know. Next question is what licensing do you have? And this is kind of important because when we talk about licensing with the new Intune Suite, some of you may already have some of these capabilities and maybe you're not using them. So we're going to get into that. And then lastly, this is something we just kind of thought about the last minute. We want to know what is your biggest day-to-day challenge in day-to-day endpoint management. And so just go ahead and type whatever you want. It's going to be a word cloud. So whatever you type, if you see some other words, some things that look, try to use the same words so we can build the actual trending there. But Shane, what are you seeing? What do you think is the biggest challenge in day-to-day endpoint management that you're seeing with your customers? And we'll get obviously into what we're talk more about it. But just real quickly, what were some of the things that you think?
Sure, yeah. So I do work with a lot of different types of organizations and a lot of different verticals, government, a lot of government and universities and so on, but really all types of organizations. And I would say the thing I probably see the most is there's just a challenge right now around balancing security with user productivity. I think it's not just user productivity, but also IT admins being able to do their jobs efficiently. So that it can be a challenge. We want to obviously lock things down very hard, but there can be a tipping point where you lock things down so hard that it makes for everything harder for everybody to get their work done. So that's one that comes up a lot. And obviously just in improving security is a constant challenge that's always on. But also I would say another one I run into is that everybody's really busy and they're trying to do more with less in IT organizations, and sometimes we're working with some customers trying to improve things, and they're so busy doing the work that they find it difficult to sharpen the saw, so to speak, to improve the all-around processes. I don't have time to get to autopilot because I'm so busy building machines manually, right?
It reminds me of that cartoon that you show of a salesman with a machine gun, and the guy's like, "I don't have busy to talk about this. I gotta fight, with my sword, because he doesn't have time." Right. So anyway.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Shane gave you some ideas, and we'll talk more about some of these as we go along as well. So when we last discussed this topic, it was, it was about endpoint. The last time we talked about an endpoint topic on the program was October 21. And we were talking about Defender for Endpoint and some of the new Plan 1 features and stuff like that. Well, lots has changed over the years. And so we thought it was important to bring Shane back and kind of take us on a trip down the memory lane there and say what's been going on and what's been going on. So Shane, go ahead and I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this isn't going to be like a really in-depth history or anything, but
Yeah,
just from a
we
high
don't have the time.
level, Intune's been around since 2010. It was released in 2010. Hard to believe it's almost more than 13 years old. This product, and it's it it at a high level, if you're not familiar with it, it is considered a unified endpoint management tool. It's cloud management, and it's really the panacea of what Microsoft and Planet would like to see you get to, is a more modern way of managing your endpoints. So it's been around for quite a while. It underwent a major rebranding back in during Microsoft Ignite of 2019, when they rebranded a lot of these products to Microsoft Endpoint Manager.
Right.
And my impression of that rebranding is that the name never really took. With Microsoft
Yep.
Endpoint Manager, it was meant to be sort of an overarching collection of the different technologies, right? So Microsoft Endpoint Manager really at its heart is combined Microsoft Intune, Configuration Manager, co-management between the two, desktop analytics, autopilot. That's all part of Microsoft Endpoint Manager, and that's what it was meant to be. But a lot of people kind of looked at that and said, well, I think they just renamed Microsoft Intune, didn't they? I mean, Intune's the old name, and now it's
Right.
called Microsoft Endpoint Manager. That's all they saw it as. And what Microsoft was going for was the single pane of glass. And if you've been working with Microsoft for any length of time, you probably know how important it is from their perspective, that to get you to a single pane of glass, and where you don't have to be flipping in and out of a lot of different tools and portals and things to accomplish your work. So the biggest purpose of it was to autopilot and desktop analytics and Intune are obviously all up in the cloud already, but config manager, you can do tenant attach, where you can attach config manager up into the cloud, so that even if you don't have even if you haven't enrolled a device in Intune, if it only has a configuration manager client, or SCCM, if you're use that acronym, which the SCCM acronym, I think they've been trying to get rid of for years and years, and they just can't seem to shake it.
Yeah.
But with configuration manager, if it has a client running on the device, then even from up in the cloud, you can push apps and policies and things down to it, and it'll just go through config manager to contact that endpoint. But it would allow you to get to a single pane of glass. I would say, from my perspective, I don't see many organizations that ever got to that level, frankly. I mean, they did the tenant attach, but they would just instinctively always open up the config manager console when they wanted to do config manager activities, and they'd go up to Microsoft Endpoint Manager when they wanted to do Intune activities. So, I don't know if the rebranding went great. Hence why we are where we are today, where we're basically rebranding it to back to Microsoft Intune. Everything is going to be under the Intune umbrella. You're going to see a lot of these product names are all prefaced by the name Intune, no matter what the capability is. So it's similar to what Microsoft has done with the Defender brand,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
from
way to
a
look at it, yeah.
security perspective. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so let's talk. Let's go to the next slide, Ken.
Yep.
Let's talk about what we mean by modern management. Now, this can mean different things to different people. I can tell you my take on it, and what I think is Microsoft's take on it. It is first and foremost, it means cloud management. It means getting rid of on-prem infrastructure and not having to maintain that infrastructure and on your easy deployment of the service. It's a heck of a lot easier to get Intune rolling than it is to set up a new configuration manager infrastructure, for example. Simplified processes. I would say that most configuration manager admins, if you've been involved with that for a long time, the deeper you are, you might know all of the little buttons to push and switches to flip, and all the log files and things that it uses, and the inboxes and the outboxes, and there's all kind of things going on behind the scene that if you want to dig deep, you can understand how everything is going on and what buttons to push to move things along. But you're managing everything yourself. You know, the content, the packages, and everything is being managed by you. And by modern management, we mean simplified processes, right? We mean you're really letting the tool take care of it more for yourself, more for on your behalf, and less of you having to, get really deep and be a super, 400 level deep technician to be able to work with SCCM, which I wouldn't. That's an exaggeration. I mean, just to work with SCCM, you don't need to be 400 level. But I mean, if you wanted to do the troubleshooting yourself, if things seem like they're not working correctly, other things, being a cloud service, the releases of new capabilities are much faster. We with Config Manager, they usually had releases every, I think for a while they were trying to do them every 4 months, and then I think they made it more like every semi-annually they would do releases. Well, with Intune, they're much faster. They can come out just pretty much anytime. I'm always noticing new things every time I open up the portal of new capabilities and features, and honing of the current features to be improved. So they're constantly improving on it. So that's a big benefit. High levels of integration with other Microsoft Cloud products is kind of a hallmark as well, such as Azure AD and the Microsoft 365 Defender products. There's a lot of integration between the different Microsoft portals and things. Better visibility of endpoints. This is kind of a big one, and this kind of goes to, we noticed there were some questions and things coming in before, as we were planning this session, that people were concerned about. What do we do with Windows updates? How do we get from an environment where we're working with Config Manager and doing all our updates there to getting to Intune and pushing updates over there? And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, the specifics around that. But the key here is that with a lot more people working remotely these days, it's a lot harder to see the devices to let, for example, if you're using Config Manager, for Config Manager to have visibility to those endpoints. Now they've made advances in that with Config Manager. It used to be, years and years ago, you had to do internet-based client management. You had to set up, certificates, which required that you have a PKI, and you had to set up HTTPS communications out to the public internet, and it was fairly complicated. And then they introduced cloud management gateways that made it a lot easier for people to get visibility to folks working from home, to patch their machines, and so that was great. But a lot of people took it also as an opportunity to switch to Intune, which when you're doing the updates through Intune, all you need to manage a machine is access to the public internet. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't care if it's inside the network or not, and you don't have to do anything special to set it up. So that was a big step in the right direction for remote management. And then one of the big hallmarks is just simplified device provisioning with autopilot, which let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't talk about modern management without talking about autopilot, which we've seen plenty of customers really starting to enjoy the benefits of. Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah. So with Windows Autopilot, if you're not familiar with it, this is basically for the last, I don't know, it's probably 4 or 5 years. This has been the main direction that Microsoft has been leaning, as opposed to doing other methods of ranging from manually, setting up devices, manually installing the operating system on devices, just installing all the apps, to using ghost images, to using the Microsoft deployment toolkit to do it, to using task sequences in Config Manager, right? Which that was for the long time, the gold standard was just doing task sequences in Config Manager. and then they started leaning towards autopilot. And the idea behind autopilot is to get away from, the old style of doing bare metal builds where, your OEM provider, Dell or Lenovo or whoever, is shipping you devices, and you immediately take those devices and you just wipe them clean, right? Yeah, we need to talk about that. So autopilot is not available now yet. I think it's supposed to be available soon. I don't I keep hearing mutterings that it's on its way, but as of yet, I have not seen it show up in GCC Hive portals. So I should preface it by that for
that it is available in GCC modern, yeah.
Yeah, in GCC, yes, yeah. not GCC Hive, because GCC shares the same same area as the commercial tenants, right. And so that's okay. Just not GCC High or DoD. So, but the idea is that instead of just completely doing a wipe and load on the machines as soon as they get shipped to you and putting on your corporate image, the idea is it's coming shipped with a perfectly good image, right? So we just, instead of having to completely wipe the machine, let's just reconfigure it to have all the policies and security settings and apps that need to be on a device that's going to work in your organization and that end users can use and be productive. So ideally, you want to, Microsoft envisions it as, let's get to the point where we can set up autopilot so that you are shipping devices directly to the end user. They can flip it on and turn it on even before they sign in with their user account. It already knows, based on the hardware device information that was uploaded and registered into autopilot in your tenant, it already identifies it as being part of your organization, right? And starts pushing down policies and running the deployment profile for that you specified that of how you want it to run. Now you can do it other ways. You can ship it. You can have your IT department be the middleman, and you can still ship it there and have them sort of pre-provision these devices. There's with pre-provisioning, what they used to call white glove. You can basically have it be set up before you ever give it to the user or ship it to the user, with all the apps installed and everything. And it saves a lot of time and setup, so it's not taking hours for users to have their laptop ready to run. Instead it's more like minutes. They can open up the laptop and be off and running. Now, when you set up this deployment profile, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. The most basic way is doing it, through just pure Azure AD join, right? Where you're joining the computer account up to Azure AD and using Windows Automatic Enrollment. It also enrolls it into Intune, and Intune is the what you're using as the tool that's going to push all the apps and policies down to the device. A lot of people aren't necessarily in a place where they can do that yet, right? Most organizations are still, heavily leaning on config manager still, and on group policy, and on applications that might rely on your on-prem AD and so forth. So if you're not in a place to do that yet, then there's a hybrid approach too, where you would hybrid join those devices. You have to install an Intune connector that allows that to happen and interact with your on-prem AD, but it joins the computer to your on-prem AD, and then Azure AD Connect synchronizes that device up to Azure AD, which fulfills the requirements for doing Intune enrollment and managing that device. They also introduced an option for hybrid Azure AD join using VPN. Without using VPN, organizations you'd have to do it in an internal network where the device will be able to see the domain controllers, right? But if you want to enable it, like, hey, I want to be able to ship it to users who are working from home, they're not anywhere near an office, then you would use the VPN approach, and you would need to deploy a VPN client through Intune. And in most cases, you also have to deploy a certificate that the VPN uses to get in to to get access to the organization. So most VPN clients will work. The main key factor there is that they have to have a start before logon capability to make that connection before the user actually logs on. Anyway, so
Okay.
that is autopilot. That's sort of what
Yeah.
we mean by the modern management approach to device provisioning. And it's also considered just an enrollment method for Intune, period, because you can enroll the devices when you provision them.
So this looks like it solves the #1 day-to-day challenge that we saw in the word cloud, which is configuration delivery. Definitely something that you want to start looking at if you haven't started looking at autopilot. It could definitely be a time saver. It could also help with break fixes, right, Shane? So instead of wasting time troubleshooting, just reimage it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not just necessarily for new machines. You can repurpose your existing devices as well to do that.
Looks like we got
Casey,
Casey's got a hand up.
we
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, just before we move on from autopilot, there are a couple of questions/comments in the chat that I wanted to see if we could potentially address. The first is
Sure,
around
yeah.
any autopilot documentation or links, and we can certainly share that out in the follow-up. And then we have another. It says, so the device VPN for hybrid joining via autopilot requires always on with device-based cert for authentication. Or for auth. Do we want to try to address that now, or?
It does not require always on, but it does require start before logon capabilities to connect. And most of the time, and I don't think I've ever seen a case where the VPN clients did not need a certificate to go with it. So you have to push out a certificate for that authentication as well through Intune.
No goofy questions. Thank you for asking it, though, because it probably helps
No
somebody
goofy
else.
questions.
Thank you, Michael.
Don't consider anything goofy.
All right, let's move on now.
Maybe Ken. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so yeah, and so another aspect of Intune that's a little bit different is what endpoints is targeting. With Config Manager, you're mainly targeting your traditional Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows servers, domain joined devices. That's where Config Manager really excels. Intune, on the other hand, is focused on mobile devices as well. So in addition to, it doesn't need to be only Windows 10 and 11. Windows 7 is no longer supported. If you still have any Windows 7 around, they dropped support for that a few years back. But Windows 10 and 11 is supported. Mac OS, iOS, Linux, Android devices are all supported, and it supports both types of scenarios, both corporate-owned devices and BYOD or personal devices are supported as well. So they support those different scenarios. Now it does not support Windows servers, and I imagine that's on the roadmap somewhere, and I've not that anything I've ever seen in print, but it seems like they're starting to make some sort of half steps in that direction. There's some capabilities that you can deploy to Windows servers, but you can't really enroll them and manage them truly as endpoint devices. So if you are in that state, that's one of the key reasons why you would want to stick to a co-managed state, between Config Manager and Intune at this point. So
one other quick note here, right? So we're talking about what we're seeing with our customer base. We're seeing lots of folks looking at using this to help them manage what they were traditionally using Jamf for, right? So maybe not 100% parity, but enough for people to get off of Jamf, possibly.
Yeah, so good point. I feel like Intune is very strong on iOS management, not as strong in Mac OS management, but but it's getting stronger all the time, and it's gotten to the point where it's actually very good now with Mac OS management. Now I can't guarantee that it's at parity with everything that Jamf can do. It probably isn't. If you've got some more advanced scenarios, then there might be some things that are lacking there. But it's gotten very strong over the last few years, and I think it's definitely worth a look if you're looking to maybe save on some licensing costs. What I always recommend to customers is doing a proof of concept around, take a couple of your Mac OS machines and try to manage them in Intune and see if you can do everything that you're doing in Jamf, and might be a way to consolidate your tool set to a Microsoft tool, if that's all you're using Jamf for,
Right.
So, okay. So the path to modern management. There's many different ways to get there. Microsoft, has recommendations for, where, if you are this type of organization, what they recommend that you do. So, number one, if you are if you're an organization that has a lot of manual processes, maybe you're a new org, or maybe maybe you're integrating a new organization into your organization. Maybe you've acquired another company, and you're adding them on. Then you might look at your environment, or maybe part of your environment, and say, what, this is a good target for managing with Intune. Let's go directly to the cloud. Let's just use Intune. Let's join our devices to Azure AD, and do pure modern management. That's an option. If you have existing cloud management, you could move your additional endpoints or workloads to the cloud management. You might just migrate some things to your cloud management that you're currently doing on-prem. But a lot of people are in this third category, right? That they've been using Config Manager for a long time. They've got on-prem AD. They've maybe made a lot of heavy investments into Config Manager. The idea there is co-management, right? And then down below, just real brief touch on that. If you're in a state where you've got a lot of complex existing on-prem infrastructure, then they also recommend doing the tenant attach, right, to connect it up to Intune. And then you can get that single pane of glass. But like I said, I don't feel like that ever really took off. But by far the third category here is where we're working with customers the most, trying to get them at least to a co-managed state, because the co-management allows you to more quickly and easily migrate into the cloud. So let's look at the next slide here, Ken. So what that looks like is basically this. On your left, you've got your on-prem, your traditional on-prem infrastructure. You've got Config Manager. Maybe you're, and I'm talking about Config Manager. Maybe you don't use Config Manager. There could be other tools you're using, BigFix or whoever, over there. But you're managing your on-prem, and you're primarily managing your Windows devices and Windows servers. Some Mac OS management in there as well. And then on the right is the Intune management, right? And doing more cloud management, adding in mobile devices in addition to desktop devices. No real server support over there yet, but in the middle is where they converge. When you do the tenant attach, you can also enable these co-management workloads where you can any one particular device. In this case, this would be Windows 10 devices, because they're the ones that are exist in both your on-prem and possibly in your cloud-only management. But you can manage them with both an SCCM client and enroll them in Intune at the same time. And then you can use the management workloads to decide which workload you want to manage that device with. And you don't have to do it all at once either. You can use pilot devices. So let's go to the next slide, and let's tie this into the example that we were talking about Windows patching, right? With Windows updates, so when you start out, like all these sliders here, these are the co-management workload sliders. All these sliders are going to be on the left. This is a window. This is coming straight out of the Config Manager console, right? You can go in here and you can manage your co-management settings. And so on the enablement tab on here, which we can't see, but that's where you set up the tenant attach. And then on this tab, you decide where you're going to put your workload sliders. And you can also create pilot groups, right? So the idea here is for all of these different types of workloads, there's 7 of them, and Windows update policies are at the bottom. We've got the slider all the way over to the left on Config Manager. Now, if we set up co-management and we leave all these sliders down to the left, and then for any devices that are both enrolled in Intune and have a Config Manager client, nothing really changes. They're still going to get all of the workloads, including their Windows updates, through Config Manager. The idea here is we want to gradually try to move these sliders over to the right-hand side of this window, so we get them managed with Intune. If they're all the way over to the right-hand side, it means that all co-managed devices, even if they've got a Config Manager client on them, we're going to let Intune manage that workload for all devices. Now, what the middle setting that lets you do is you can specify on another tab, on the staging tab, you can specify the pilot groups, and you can set up pilot collections in Config Manager and say, okay, only the devices that and you can do a different one for each one of these different workloads. And you can say, okay, for this group, this collection in Config Manager, for any devices I add to that collection, I'm going to set the slider to the middle for Windows Update policies. So any devices I put in there are going to get their updates from Intune, but all the other devices, anything that's not in that collection, is still going to get their updates from Config Manager. So that what I usually tell customers, that the journey from doing Windows updates in Config Manager to Intune, it's basically you want to set up that pilot group and start moving at least a few devices in there as your initial pilot, and say, okay, what's this going to look like? Let's start doing patching through Intune, and let's continue doing everything else through Config Manager, and let's see how it goes. A lot of our customers have some sort of vulnerability. What's that? I'm not even going to try to remember this product name because now I'm not remembering it. But a lot of people have vulnerability assessment tools, right? They can go
Qualys,
check for.
Yeah.
What's that?
Qualys or something?
Yes, for example.
Yeah.
Qualys, or I was thinking of one that starts with T. I want to say like Tenant or something. Tenable. Yes.
Michael Lana
gets
right.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, tools like that, right? That are going to check vulnerability against those, and it will give you, if you're using tools like that, or just you could just read the obviously the information you get back from Intune or from Config Manager. But if you're using a vulnerability assessment tool like that, then you can look at your whole environment, and you can kind of compare, like, well, how's patching going with the Intune pilot group compared to the rest of the organization? Is it meeting all the, is it closing up all those vulnerabilities? So, so that's how I would do it. This to me is a way of easing into the cloud, right? So you don't have to just on Monday you're on Config Manager and using group policy and you're in AD, and then on Tuesday you're not using Config Manager and you're in Intune. And if you're looking, some people are trying to get away from AD to Azure AD. That can be difficult because then you have the additional challenge of group policies not there anymore. So now you've got to use pure MDM policies. So anyway, I probably need to move on, but that's my take on that.
So autopilot co-management should be on your radar for things to address this next year. Definitely. Let's talk about things to address. Let's talk about the new Intune Suite.
Let's talk about the new. So this is exciting, and I'm glad to see that looks like we've got a pretty good turnout this week. Not that I come every time. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what's considered a good turnout. But it's a good turnout.
They knew you were coming.
But I well, I'm sure it's not me, but I'm excited about what they're doing with the Intune Suite. First and foremost, I think it's you'll notice that when you log into the portal today, and for you commercial and GCC customers, you'll be going to endpoint.microsoft.com. If you're GCC high, you'll be going to endpoint.microsoft.us. But you'll notice that they changed it. It used to say Microsoft Endpoint Management Admin Center, or MEM Admin Center, up in the top left. Now it says Microsoft Intune Admin Center. And I think they did that back in like October of last year, right after the last Ignite, when they announced all of this that was coming, right? So I think it's, I don't know, it's a small thing. Honestly, I just feel like it's much clearer. They're just going to get rid of all the Microsoft Endpoint Manager talk. You'll see that start disappearing from the documentation, replaced. And so if you want to start taking a look at the new Intune Suite, the starting point is you go into your tenant administration tab. Unfortunately, we should address the elephant in the room right away here.
Yep.
These are not yet available for GCC, GCC High, and DoD yet. And unfortunately, also, we don't even have a date. We don't have even a quarter of when this is going to be. Yeah, I see some
well, it depends on the
faces.
feature,
I'm
right?
sorry.
Definitely depends on the
that?
feature, and the roadmap actually has some. I've got some notes on the roadmap coming up here.
Yeah.
But definitely check your roadmap for the latest and greatest.
Yeah, there are a few exceptions, but right now, as usual, things are first going to commercial before
Absolutely.
they get vetted out for the sovereign clouds. So it's yeah. So
let's talk
sorry
about these
that.
features.
Yeah, but it's brand new. All right, so features. So these are some of the new features. I'm gonna show you some pictures of a few of them. Microsoft Intune Tunnel for mobile application management, Microsoft Intune management of specialty devices, Microsoft Intune remote help, Microsoft Intune endpoint privilege management, and Microsoft Intune advanced endpoint analytics. And let's go to the next slide, and we'll just jump right into them and start talking about them. So first off, Intune Tunnel for MAM, or mobile application management. Now, Intune Tunnel has been out for, I don't know, I want to say maybe 6 months for enrolled devices. What this is bringing to the table now is that for unenrolled devices, aka BYOD, personal devices, usually is where that sits. Yep. We can now also create sort of this VPN light, lightweight VPN solution for iOS and Android mobile devices to connect to your internal on-premises resources and do their work. So this is going to allow users to securely access those resources and make them more productive with their personal mobile devices. They'll be able to use more of their devices of choice for doing their work. They won't have to carry 2 devices. I know some organizations require that people carry 2 devices. One is like their corporate, and one is their personal. So this is going to allow organizations to more easily embrace BYOD policies, right, for their users. This does require like a Linux. It runs on Linux in your environment, so to set this up. So FYI on that. This is what it looks like from the client side. That on the previous slide, that was an app configuration policy, and so that's where you set it up from an Intune admin side. But from a user side, this is what it would look like. On the left, we've got an Android device, someone opening up Edge, and we've configured an app configuration policy for Edge to connect through the Microsoft tunnel. If they try to sign in with their personal, when they try to sign into these, they'll have to sign in with their Microsoft credentials, and when they sign in, if they do it with their personal account, they won't be able to connect. They'd have to sign in with their corporate credentials. And then on the right is an example of an iOS device. Not so many clues on this one. It's only when you first launch the app, you'll see it establishing the secure tunnel connection there. And that's an example of just launching a line of business app that's connecting to internal resources on that one.
Yeah, now the roadmap actually says Android is rolling out for GCC, DoD, and GCC High in March 2023. We'll have to see if that actually happens. Tunnel iOS is previewing in January of this year, and then actually rolling out to non-GCC in March. So we'll have to see. But that's what the roadmap's saying. Okay.
Yeah, eight days left and counting. All right.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, yeah, and so Intune Tunnel for MAM is available as part of the Intune Plan 2 add-on or the Intune Suite, and we're going to talk more about those, the packages, right after we discuss the capabilities. So that'll make more sense in a minute. So another new thing coming, the Intune management of specialty devices. Sorry, this slide is a little wordy here, but the overall idea is that Microsoft is expanding the management of endpoint management across more types of devices based on feedback that they saw from a poll they did through another third-party company that gathered a lot of information. They were seeing that there's a good chunk of endpoints out there that are these specialty devices that are not being managed at all in most organizations. So they're looking to, and it's getting to the point where, people are starting to use lots of different types of platforms as attack vectors, in your organization. And so we're trying to close up all those gaps. This is a key part of that. So this is focused on AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality headsets, wearable headsets, conference room, meeting devices, large smart screen devices that you might have in conference rooms and meeting rooms and things. All of that is fair game. And the types of device management capabilities that they're looking to add are, provisioning capabilities, how to enroll those devices and get them managed, certificate and Wi-Fi management, conditional access policies, compliance policies, app lifecycle, deploying apps to them, retiring applications, remote actions like being able to do a remote lock of the device or wipe it or reboot it. All of those types of things. It's looking to try and standardize across all these different types of specialty devices. There are some you can see that excludes some things that they're not focused on yet, such as wearable type devices aren't a big focus right now. Foldable messaging devices, IoT devices, but but IoT you mostly want to look at Defender for IoT, as your main protection method over in the Azure Defender products. So Teams VoIP devices, it does not list that. I've not seen that the Teams VoIP devices.
Well, it says conference room devices, so I don't know if that really includes the Teams devices. I would think it should.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's a great question. That is a great question.
Maybe we could take that as a follow-up. Maybe we could take that as a follow-up and see if Teams phones. That's called. Okay, all right, gotcha. Yeah, so we'll look see if we can find any information on that. There's not a whole lot of information out about this one yet that I can see, so it's a little limited. But and I didn't see it mentioned out of anything that they have available so far in the documentation. But yeah, we can take a look at that. All right, remote help. So this one is probably it's not. Hello, Anita. So it's probably not going to be leaps and bounds beyond what you can currently do with Bomgar or other products that you might currently be using, but it would let you get rid of those tools, right? It would let you consolidate on a single platform. Some of the things they're focused on right off the bat here is. And I should explain. This is basically remote help. It's remote connectivity. It's completely cloud-based. You can connect to your, you can have your help desk users connect to your users' devices. This actually launched in April of 2022, so it's been around for a good while. And you can connect even to devices that are not necessarily that are not enrolled in Intune. So that's an option as well. When you connect, you'll be able to do things like chat. There's a laser pointer option, so you can point to things on the screen. The chat's nice if you don't necessarily want to have a call open where you're talking with the person at the same time. You could just do it through chat. Let's flip to the next slide as well and talk a little bit more about that. So some of the things on the roadmap are ServiceNow integration is supposed to be coming out soon, I believe. I think it's already in preview. And so they're working on ServiceNow integration. They're working on support for Android and Mac OS devices. Right now it's Windows only. Also on the roadmap, the ability to apply conditional access policies. So you can require users to use MFA before they can sign into remote help and do that. So that's an option there. So remote help, it's going to be available as an add-on to the regular core Intune stuff, or it's going to be part of the Intune Suite as well.
Question was, did
I
you
did
say
not say
iOS
iOS devices. Well,
Okay.
I have not seen anything yet about iOS. I would assume that would be on the roadmap, but
Yeah.
I did not find any evidence that it was on the roadmap yet.
iOS usually seems
So,
like it lags behind the Android stuff. So here's one I'm
yeah.
excited about: endpoint privilege management. This is one of the most exciting announcements, I think. Shane, what do you think? Especially when you're looking at zero trust, right?
I think that a lot of people are going to like this. I don't know. I just, based on my conversations I've had with customers, I think they're going to like it, because this is one of the key things that is just a big pain in the neck for IT departments, right? Is that you've got you want to make everybody standard user across the board, so that they can't do things like accidentally download and install an app that looked legit, but it's actually malware or it's ransomware, whatever, and then you're like, okay, well, we'll just give you temporary admin access. And then sometimes you forget to go back and remove the temporary admin access. Or, if you're flat out just so sick of dealing with it because you're tired of having to remote in, or maybe go to their directly to their desk and say, okay, let me log in for you, I'll install this. This is a big chunk of help desk time, is installing apps for users and things like that. That doesn't have to be there, or installing printers, right? It's a challenge. You don't want to make everybody an admin, because that's not secure. You don't want to make everybody standard user, and not have any other options, because then they can't get their work done, and you got to spend a lot more time doing things for them. So hence endpoint privilege management. The idea here is that there's other tools out there. A lot of the tools that, well, I won't say a lot, I don't know how many, but there's some other tools out there that are more time-based, right? I'll give you admin privileges for a certain amount of time. Endpoint privilege management is more task-based.
Yeah.
So the idea is, you need to install an app, or you need to install a printer. I'm going to give you the rights to specifically do that one thing and nothing else, but it gives them temporary, elevated rights to be able to do that task. So, just to see just a few quick screenshots. The previous one was where you set up the policies, and then the end user experience is, I want to launch this app, and I want to do the installation. IT admin gives you temporary ability to do that, and this is where you see the elevated window show up that lets you do it. There's a new in addition that says run elevated as elevated admin, and so that's remote help. Sorry, endpoint privilege management. Okay, last one, advanced endpoint analytics. So the idea with this one is, let's analyze what's going on end user devices. Let's look at anomalies. Let's look at apps that are hanging, and slow boot times, slow login times. Let's look at that types of information and see what is occurring in our environment. And then it lets you be, proactively address those things and try to improve the user experience of users, and improve the user productivity. So this is all about user productivity. So the next slide shows what it looks like when you dive down into one of those anomalies, and you can see what devices are affected by this anomaly. That shows that telemetry real-time tool.exe is experiencing crashes. You can see a timeline of what's going on particular devices, and see that it has different things. Maybe had apps crash at a certain time. If you've ever opened up Reliability Monitor on your Windows device, this is basically doing it at a centralized admin level. And I'm willing to bet there's a lot of people on this call that never even knew that Reliability Monitor was on there. It's not called out very highly, but it's a tool that gives you similar information at an individual device level. All right, so future capabilities. Next slide. Some things that are coming that are actually I'm very excited about are advanced app management, which is an enterprise app catalog and controls for easy app discovery, deployment, automatic updating to mitigate risks introduced by out-of-date apps. The most important part of there that I'm excited about is the automatic updating. You know, it can be difficult to keep apps up to date. And then on the right-hand side, cloud certificate management. So right now, Intune does support certificates, but it's all you have. It relies on your on-prem PKI basically, and it's kind of complex to, you know. So I'm looking forward to being able to rely completely on cloud certificate management for that and take away that away. So let's talk about the overall value of Intune Suite. You know, what is this giving to us? And from my point of view, I think the top one is the money you can save by consolidating to a single tool set. You know, if you can get rid of some of the other tools that are doing the same thing, you could save them those licensing costs, reducing the number of tools you're using, and you know, standardizing on a single tool means you're going from many attack vectors down to just a single one, and that you can protect more. You can, you know, in a better way. Simplified admin experience. You don't have to train them on so many tools. They don't have to be jumping from one tool to the next. A single data feed instead of many different data feeds from different tools. Single Microsoft data feed that integrates with Microsoft Security and Microsoft 365 products. So all using the same data feed. You know, a lot of people are really focused on getting something up to, you know, Microsoft Sentinel or some other SIM tool and get that one feed all getting in there. That makes it a lot easier to do that. Heavy focus on remote work and BYOD. You can see how some of the products we talked about will you know, be better for remote work and BYOD with some of the things we talked about. So let's talk about the subscription options. So these are the different plans, right? Intune Plan 1 is the core capabilities that you're used to seeing that we've had all along through, you know, if you have a Microsoft 365 E3 licenses, or if you have Enterprise Mobility and Security E3, you know, or maybe Intune standalone plan, you know, that's all the core capabilities. And you can add, you know, individual capabilities as add-ons. If you just want one or two, you can just, you know, put them in as add-ons. But honestly, once you get to 3 or above, you might as well get the Intune Suite, right? And you get, and that's an add-on on top of Plan 1 that includes all the extra capabilities for one price. Intune Plan 2, if you want to do Microsoft Tunnel or management of specialty devices, if that the only way to get those, you can't get them through add-ons right now. The only way to get them is through Intune Plan 2, which includes both of those capabilities. The Plan 1 is still required. You would add Plan 2 on top of it. And then finally, Intune Suite is basically everything except the core capabilities. So if you want to, all the extra features plus the features coming in the future, which I don't know what, if they're going to be add-ons or if they're only going to be in the suite or in Plan 2, we'll have to see. They're definitely in the Intune Suite, you know, as slated as of right now. They're going to be in the Intune Suite, the ones that I talked about on the previous slide about the cloud certificate management and the advanced app management. Okay, next slide. So this is Intune Plan 1 license. So these are the different SKUs that it's included in. I think we talked a little about that. It is included in some of the frontline SKUs down at the bottom. You can see.
So anybody with M365 or EMS is pretty much included with Plan 1. Pretty much.
Right. This is $8 per user per month for Intune Plan 1. Well, at the bottom, you can see the summary of the add-ons that can be added to Plan 1 as of right now. Remote help, endpoint privilege management, and the advanced endpoint analytics will be available as an add-on soon. Let's go to the next
So
one.
quick question.
Yeah.
I know
Sorry,
Autopilot's not part of this announcement, but where's Autopilot fit in the licensing model? Is that part of Microsoft 365 or EMS?
It is. Yeah. It's part of both of those. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Very good.
Yeah. So usually if you've got Intune Plan 1, you've got Autopilot as well.
That makes sense.
Typically,
that's what I thought.
Unless they have still a standalone license, and I guess in that case you wouldn't. But I don't know how they can pull them apart, honestly, because you log in and you see it's in the Intune, portal when you log in. So I don't know, but okay. And then Plan 2, that's $4 per user per month added on to the Plan 1. So it's an add-on, but it gives you those two capabilities, the tunnel and the specialty device management there. And then we have Intune Suite, which is $10 per month. Now, that is still on top of the Plan 1. So if you wanted to get everything, you would need it would be the $8 plus $10, so $18 per user per month, and that includes all of the existing capabilities and including the ones that are in Plan 2, are in here as well. And this is a summary chart of the where they fall. They did, remote help right now is just a standalone add-on. It's also included in the Intune Suite. Tunnel is in Intune Plan 2 and the Suite. Specialist Device Management in Intune Plan 2 and the Suite. Advanced Endpoint Analytics only in the Suite, not currently an add-on, but will be soon. And then not mentioned Endpoint Privilege Management, and that's probably because it's actually still in preview of this month. It's supposed to be generally available next month. So, but that is going to be available as a standalone add-on for Plan 1, and will be in the Intune Suite as well. And just a note about government cloud availability. So this is, on the pricing sheet, on the pricing website, which I think is in Ken's links at the end. It does state, that the Intune Plan 2 and Microsoft Intune Suite, except for the exceptions that we mentioned, are not yet available for GCC, GCCI, or DoD customers. I have not been able to find any reference to even a ballpark of when that's going to be available. For some reason, I'm still feeling. I'm not even going to say no. I'm not going to put it out there. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Tunnel for GCC for Android was the only thing that was coming soon. It looked like for GCC customers.
Yeah.
All right. So we're pretty much done with the program today. Thank you for staying with us this long. We'd love to know, Casey, if you can push this last poll for us about the future upcoming topics. So governance team, this is part of the 5 disciplines we talked about for governance back a month ago. Security baselines, another one of the 5 disciplines for governance. Microsoft information protection, or other. If you have something else, feel free to write it in. We'd love to know what you'd like to hear us talk about moving forward. Here's the list of helpful links. This is this month's, this is a link to all of our blogs, as well as the last blog we wrote on securing the endpoint that Shane wrote back in 2021. Still very helpful, though. Definitely take a look at that. Then all the information about the Intune Suite announcements, all broken down here by granularity. I'm sorry we're out of time, but we will definitely answer the questions in the follow-up that Casey's going to send out. So please make sure you go ahead and do that. And as always, take a look at the Microsoft roadmap. Just Google the word roadmap Microsoft and you'll find it, and just type the word Intune in there as a filter, and you can kind of see and keep track of where all these releases are coming out there.
Yeah, and on that previous slide, on your links, just real quick, the second, where is it? The third link there, the YouTube link.
The video,
it's very good.
It's like 6
about
minutes
10 minutes long.
Yeah, 6 to 10 minutes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, or is it? Well, I don't remember. Anyway, it's not very long, and so I'd recommend giving that a watch. And it demos a lot of the products and very well. So,
all right,
thank you. Appreciate your
attendance
today.
Just a reminder.